Hello and welcome to the Big Impact Academy. My name is Jeff Coulard. I'm the founder and principal and chief facilitator, I suppose, at Attainability Group, where our mission is to build incredible teams. And one of our projects right now is the Big Impact Academy, where we're working with some of the best and brightest minds in leadership and innovation to really kind of take a look at the nonprofit sector, particularly the helping professions, and try and do things a bit differently. So what we're talking about leadership development. And here we've partnered with Stephen Groot, who is the presenter today in today's webinar with Myriad Consulting, and he specializes in corporate and human services leadership development with the responsive leadership approach. And you'll be hearing much more about that. We're looking at innovation and design thinking, and for that we're working with Dr. Alex Bruton with the Straight Up Business Institute and the Ethnographer, using some of his really highly practical design tools and bringing them into the nonprofit space for better strategic planning and everything that goes with that innovation. And finally, we'll talk about impact, and that's where I come in, and we talk about how to assure impact. So to go from having these good intentions of doing some good work and measuring our impact in ways that don't necessarily line up with what we actually do, to getting really focused on this thing called utilization focused evaluation. So evaluation that is useful and impact that you can measure and then market to the world. So welcome to the Big Impact Academy. You can check it out, bigimpactacademy.com. And I'm going to turn things over to Stephen DeGroot, and he's going to be talking about responsive leadership for the next 15 minutes or so.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I'm here to talk about responsive leadership. More importantly, not only what is responsive leadership, but why is it so important for supervisors and managers in human services to utilize and leverage? Responsive leadership, really is about a practical and very simple approach to maximizing the motivation, the engagement, and the performance of workers in the various fields of human services. Responsive leadership, in the most simplest terms, is relations oriented. Many people can attest to that. It's values-based and values-driven. It's strengths-focused. It's simple and practical, and super important is that it's really developed and designed to promote and optimize preferred outcomes, not for just employees, but also for clients and the very important people that they serve. Before we get into what responsive leadership is, it's really important to make a case for responsive leadership. Now, this isn't about complaining, it's about an accurate understanding of the realities that many frontline workers in various social services experience. Now, it's not about motivation. Social service workers, I think it's important, are very motivated people. The secret isn't how do you get workers to be more motivated, but how do you maintain the motivation that they show up with during and throughout their career in very tough environments. And that's what they are. Social services nowadays seems to be getting more tough. There are many organizational bureaucratic challenges that make very difficult work more difficult, like overly hierarchical and bureaucratized environments. And often environments can be governed by policy, protocols, procedures, top-down decision-making. Many frontline workers talk about those decisions being out of touch with the frontline realities of practice. Many frontline workers will attest that there's paperwork over the people work, and that many things that happen in the field are very politically reactive, and that there's constant change going on, whether it's practice decisions standards of practice, changing legislative mandates, and those things. Many frontline workers in various industries talk about having to do more with less, being on the end of fiscal restraints, limited resources, being in environments where there's poor retention or high turnover. And the caseloads are not only higher and heavier nowadays, but they have increased complexity of cases. Many workers talk about being, feeling a value in congruence, having less time for people work, less time to focus on relationships, less time to be strengths focused. And many workers often report being out of step with how they prefer to work and carry out the work. These are some of the realities that impact the level of motivation and engagement and commitment of workers. I call it the loss of great helpers. That because, considering the perspective that there is a link between positive work environments and job satisfaction, engagement, performance, it is not a surprise that the current social service industry work environments are actually antithetical to promoting positive worker perceptions and experiences of the work as they carry it out. I often talk about, many workers going from that sense of burning desire to burning out quickly and experiencing high degrees of stress and strain, often impacting to various degrees in different sectors. Of course, it's variable. Often low morale, feelings of devalued, not being supported, overworked, disempowered, and to varying degrees feeling exceptionally physically, emotionally, and mentally burnt out in many cases. Well, what's really important is that burnout is manifested not only in the health issues and the absenteeism and the need for mental health days, but it's also manifested in many sectors as high turnover, exit strategies, transfers, early retirement, and leaving the field altogether. There's a lot of people that leave the field, or they move on, or they move out. But what's exceptionally concerning to me is the group of people that I call the working wounded. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that prior to a worker making the decision to leave, it's not really a deliberate and conscious, it is a deliberate and conscious choice that people have been experiencing or thinking about for some time. They refer to that as intent to leave. However, while many workers have a desire to leave the job, many of them don't act on that intent. And that is, they stay in the field experiencing high levels of burnout. This impacts their ability to provide better service, right? There's lots of evidence that there's a conflict between organizational priorities and workers' expectations, and leading employees to keep up with these demands. And sometimes, well, in many cases, they put their own emotional well-being, their emotional well-being is at risk with those high levels of burnout. They will put their clients ahead of their own health in many cases. Now, there's huge impacts, right? I mean, the research demonstrates, we all know this, that just as positive work environments and engagement and feeling good about the work helps outcomes and productivity, the converse is also true, that there's a link between job stress and counterproductivity. Simply put, when workers do well, their clients do well. And when workers' practice decisions suffer, so does the well-being of clients. That's something that's really important. But, we know all of this. Well, what makes this different? Well, sometimes it's like, where do we start with all of these impediments to practice, the structural, the organizational, the bureaucratic, the fiscal restraints? Well, in a moment of profound discovery by accident, back in between 2003 and 2005, we were working with two child welfare teams, and we were trying to improve, in a research study, improving the level of engagement, team cohesiveness, and overall just feelings of empowerment and just betterment by using a strengths-based approach to team building. At the end of the project, we had an experimental group, which we intervened with a strategies and tools, and we had a control group, which we just represented the other group, and we did nothing, just let it ride, and they did their work. And we found at the end that the control group had higher levels of satisfaction, team cohesion, empowerment, and engagement. Now, as a researcher, that wasn't a really good outcome, so we looked into that, and we found out that there was one major difference. Now, these teams were almost identical: number of years in practice, complexity of cases, number of caseloads, inner city, all of that stuff. The biggest difference that we noticed, which was a profound and accidental discovery, is the biggest difference was the perceived sense of support and perceived quality relationship they had with their direct supervisor. So the team that was doing well had a better relationship, according to them, than the other team with their direct supervisor. This led us, and me in particular, on the road to responsive leadership. I had to look at this. I had to look at this area of supervision because the other impediments to practice seemed too big and unmanageable, and this seemed to be something that was within our control. So we pursued this direction. The solution, we thought, might be supervision, might be leadership. However, we know from research and the work that we do that supervision has a huge impact on job satisfaction, culture, climate, worker commitment, retention, and turnover. However, as we started interviewing thousands of people and we started doing research, one reality became stark and concerning, and that was many frontline human service workers were reporting what they would call inadequate supervision, which was supervision and the support they were experiencing was not adequate for their own needs to carry out the work. Many other workers in high numbers were also talking about, they refer to as poor quality of supervision, which is a neutral to negative experience with their supervisor or the supervision process. Given how impactful supervision is, this solution was in crisis. And this was something that we had to take seriously because poor quality of supervision can be detrimental to both staff and client outcomes. For many workers, inadequate or poor supervision wasn't only recognized as an impediment to good practice, but it was also claimed as a major factor in burnout, intent to leave, and the decision to do so. So this thing that we found as the solution seemed to be in crisis, which might sound weird, but was exciting because we could remedy this with one approach. So we were looking at improving the poor state of supervision for majority of social service workers, and how are we going to do that? How are we going to approach this? Well, the profound realization was both satisfied and unsatisfied workers were operating in similar, if not the same, circumstances. So it wasn't really about changing the circumstances. The evidence was overwhelming. What we needed to change was the environment within the environment, and that was quality leadership. Leadership is known from a research and practice experience as an organizational dimension, is primary for mediating employee satisfaction, motivation, commitment, and engagement. So therefore, it's this area, the leader-member dyad, that was requiring the greatest amount of attention. So this led to responsive leadership. That we got to focus on this area to improve the relationship between workers and their supervisors, but more importantly, how do we improve the impact that supervision has for employee satisfaction and performance? So the building blocks of responsive leadership, scholarship was saying that if supervisors and managers could improve their relationships and increase their ability to connect with the individual needs, values, goals, and strengths of their workers, they were going to improve the supervision approach and get closer to attaining or approximating better outcomes for employees. So the question became, how can supervisors and managers make most meaning in for employees as they carry out the work? Well, responsive leadership was the way. Now, the guiding priorities of responsive leadership they're not new, and they're quite straightforward. Responsive leadership makes quality leader-member relationships a priority. It promotes the operationalization in a very concrete and tangible way of important values, including trust, respect, integrity, and empathy. Responsive leadership emphasizes interpersonal communication and skill development, and utilizes very specific relations and strengths-oriented strategies to access the worker and the worker's story. That is, getting to the workers, what makes the worker's work most meaningful. That is critical, which makes responsive leadership unique because it encourages the accurate identification and leveraging of workers' needs, values, goals, and strengths as it relates to the work. And importantly, responsive leadership strives for greatest fit between worker experience and the work environment itself to optimize motivation, engagement, and overall performance. And as I've stated already, responsive leadership works to improve both preferred outcomes for staff and clients simultaneously. Now, that's all great in theory, right? But one of the things about responsive leadership and my determination was to make it exceptionally practical. So responsive leadership not only has a great set of guiding priorities, but tons of simple practical tools and strategies to improve engagement and optimize performance. One of those tools, which many people are using, is a key performance motivator scale. It is so simple. It's a tool that gets supervisors and managers to tune into what motivates their staff to perform, what gets them excited, which aspects of the work is most meaningful. It's simple and easily operational. Another tool that responsive leadership holds in high regard is the preferred leadership profile. That is a tool that enhances the leader's ability to get to know, understand, and respond to those what we refer to as core four in a manner that leads to the greatest development of employees, essentially the greatest preferred staff and client outcomes. The preferred leadership is one of my favorite tools. It actually takes, it takes a very short period of time to conduct, but it almost gives managers and supervisors, years and years and years worth of information that they can use at their disposal to leverage better outcomes. Another tool and another process that's offered in responsive leadership is the operationalization of values, a very concrete approach for defining values, negotiating shared understanding, and more importantly, identifying specific value-based leader behaviors in operation. Now, this is critical because by the thousands, frontline workers say that they feel better and do better and get better outcomes when they feel that there's an alignment between supervisor and manager behaviors and the values that they promote. So this is absolutely critical. There are tons of effective communication strategies within responsive leadership under the term meaning making. There's just dozens and dozens of those strategies. There are tools for becoming strengths focused in your leadership practice. Relationship is a priority, but responsive leadership also makes strengths approach a priority by defining strengths specifically, by helping leaders and managers search for strengths, build on them, and more importantly, leverage those strengths in the pursuit of personal and professional goals for attaining preferred employee and client outcomes. In addition to those tools for strengths-based approach within responsive leadership, quality leadership can be very practical as well. The responsive leadership approach has identified 7 specific domains that relates to the motivators of most employees and gives supervisors and managers more than 100 tangible ways of linking that domain to their practice to make it more meaningful. Without getting into it, there are 7 domains, and there are over 100 specific strategies to help supervisors and managers leverage better performance. And finally, lastly but not least, one of the most important and valuable aspects of responsive leadership is helping supervisors and managers deal with difficult behaviors of employees, helping them understand and approach resistance and opposition in a way that doesn't only minimize that type of behavior and the impacts of that behavior, but actually can eliminate it altogether. There's an approach called care fronting in responsive leadership that takes supervisors and managers through a step-by-step process for decreasing and eliminating oppositional and resistive behavior so that they can get back to working effectively in a way that attains and approximates better outcomes. So overall, what's great about responsive leadership, Jeff, is that it is not only a strong conceptual framework that's aligned with relational and strengths-based strategies for service delivery on the ground. The great thing about responsive leadership approach is that it offers supervisors and managers not only the conceptual framework, but tons of simple, practical, and tangible strategies for motivating and engaging frontline human service workers to perform optimally as they carry out their work.
Thank you so much for joining us for the last 15 minutes talking about responsive leadership. And if you're interested in learning more, you can check out bigimpactacademy.com and just click on the link, and this will take you to this page, which is the page for our responsive leadership and the right use of power event that's coming up in October 26th and 27th in Calgary, Alberta. So if you're interested, by all means, check this out. Sign up to get on the list or register to get some tickets. There's only about less than 2 months until this event happens. So we very much hope to see you there. And thanks for listening.